something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
We the people tell the government what to do. It doesn't tell us. We the people are the driver. The government is the car. And we decide where it should go and by what route to do. We the people are free. And I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited.
Well, g'day, folks. How are you? Hope you've had a very good weekend. You've stayed out of the wet and, for the most part, the cold places where there have been some over the last few days. Not necessarily in Queensland. It's either been wet or drying out from the wet, which in Queensland, the further north you go, means the warmer it gets. Unfortunately, the humidity gets sucked out of the ground as soon as the sun comes out. But I'm led to believe that things go well in those rain-affected areas and flood-affected areas in Western Queensland and Northern Territory. Still a lot of water around, though. So thoughts and feelings to those folks at the moment. How you guys going? Do you have a good weekend? Party hard? Do all those good things? Who was first in the house tonight? Go back and have a look. Ali was first in the house. Thank goodness there's a show tonight. Yeah, it was a bit hit and miss on Mondays, isn't it? I do apologise. But there are some fairly significant developments that I suppose we should be talking about, not least of which is what happened in South Australia over the weekend. If you haven't had the opportunity yet, go and have a look at the FBN Media site, FBN Media on YouTube. Vince did a show yesterday afternoon, which brought you up to speed with what things or where things were at with the South Australian election yesterday afternoon. There has been some significant changes, and we'll update that a little bit later in the bulletin tonight. Bulletin, gee, there's a big word. Don't know that we're doing news here, but anyway, whatever we call it. G'day, Tony. Lovely to have you in, mate. I've had some very interesting conversations today with the Cairns News. Have you been and checked out cairnsnews.org recently? They've had a bit of a facelift, and they are looking very flash and some very nice and very good stories. You're about to see a few more turn up there in the next day or two that are of significance to us, including maybe something that we're going to be talking about tonight. Well, in fact, there'll be a few things that you'll find on their website that we will be talking about tonight. They may not be on the website yet. Don't mean to steal their thunder. They're going to be able to do a lot more on it than I am. But, yeah, there are some significant issues going to be affecting us in the future and in the very near future here in Australia. Now, everybody has been very, 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 very concerned about fuel prices, and we will talk fuel prices a little later on. In fact, there's been some supposed good news from our government today about that, and we'll talk about that soon. But fuel, diesel in particular, but petrol and other things are not our immediate concern. The fuels are not our concern. The massive shockwave that's going to hit the global economy very shortly has nothing to do with oil at all. The world, believe it or not, is running out of something you and I probably didn't think was going to be an issue. The world is running out of helium. Oh, gee, I hear you say. Why would the world be worried about running out of helium? Well, modern medicine is going to collapse without it. Now, when the Iranian missiles destroyed Qatar's natural gas hub, they took out 33% of the world's helium production. So, no, that doesn't mean that there's, party balloons and all that sort of thing is going to be the problem. That won't be the problem. Helium is something they call or refer to as the invisible blood of a modern civilization. And that can be a bit of an issue. It's got the lowest boiling point in the universe of I think it's minus 269 degrees. And helium is hard to hang on to. It escapes. There is this real problem with it. It is so light that it constantly can evaporate right through solid steel. So you can't stockpile helium. And the global supply chain for it has what they say is a pretty strict 45-day shelf life. That's not because the helium goes out of date or becomes unusable. It's because after that date, it is very, very difficult to contain. It escapes. Now, Qatar, who did until Iran put a ballistic missile through the roof of it, used to produce, as I say, a third of the world's helium. So that's not so flash. Australia, of course, used to produce helium up until Darwin, up until 2023, when whatever hole they were extracting the LNG from, and the byproduct of that was liquid natural gas, was helium, that ended. So now we've had to get our helium from Qatar, from Algeria, and from the United States. Now, I don't know where we mainly get it from. I suspect Qatar. I doubt it'll be Algeria, and if we are getting it from America, it will be only through an American company, I guess, that it's got contracts here in Australia, and there are quite a few of them. But like I say, it's very hard to hang on to. 45 days is the shelf life, they say, but unless you have something like a cryogenic tank to keep it all safe, then you are not going to have any luck keeping it all there. So now we're going to be out of diesel and helium. Okay, so why is that such a significant problem? Why is helium, why are we going to have this shortage of party balloons, that's going to terrify us all? We're not. The fact that this is a supercoolant is what the issue is. I said before that it gets down to minus 279 degrees, or 269 degrees rather, Celsius. That's bloody cold. It is an inert gas, means that it won't burn, doesn't combust, won't burst into flames, and it is compressible, like all gases. You can do great things with it. But the biggest use we have for it is for cooling. And what does it cool? It cools our MRI machines. Every hospital with an MRI has a liquid helium tank that is used to keep those magnets inside the MRI machines from melting down. And they will quite literally melt down with the heat and temperatures that they generate. The machines will die without helium to keep them cool. Now, that's not the only sector. In the tech sector, helium is the perfect inert gas to use in very, very fine, detailed electronic connections. It's unreactive, and it provides an unreactive shield to manufacture every silicone microchip in every phone in the world. In aerospace, SpaceX and NASA use it to pressurize rocket fuel tanks so they don't freeze when they go into space and accidentally blow up. But they can't store this stuff because it leaks out through steel. Now, the cylinders that you get if you're buying party balloons, that kind of thing, those small cylinders, the domestic supply, if you like, will be gone now if it's not already gone. I'd be amazed if you can get any helium for your party balloons now. And I doubt you'll get any for a long, long time. If you do have access to a supply of helium, I'd find out from whoever's selling it to you when it was filled, when that helium bottle was filled, because I would say you have a very strict 45 days or less, because most of your gas will actually vent out through the steel of the tank. You can do everything you can to tighten the nozzle, but it's just going to keep going. It's called boil-off, and boil-off is a significant loss factor when it comes to dealing with helium, and it is a factor when it comes to hospitals. So that's why they have to continually get their liquid helium supplies, pardon me, replenished is the word. They also have capture systems which allow them to capture any of the gas that is escaping, even through these very, very tough cryogenic tanks, and then they can reprocess it, turn it back into gas, and put it back into the system. There is still some loss. But other systems that aren't that proficient, like poorer operating systems, they just vent it out into the universe, out into the atmosphere. I mean, it's not going to hurt you, so there's no issue with that, but it's a hell of a waste. And especially if you need it to super cool your MRI machine. So if you're looking for MRIs in the near future, or you're due for one, I would be trying to get my appointment moved up, or begging, hopefully, that you don't get to a point where you need one, hopefully, but praying that you stay healthy enough never to need one, not through this crisis anyway. But if you are already in the chain for one, I suggest you start making some calls and start limping a bit harder or heavier or whatever you have to do to get yourself closer to that machine before the gas runs out. And that's going to happen sooner rather than later. It's something the Australian government, I seriously doubt that the health department have even thought about from a government perspective just yet. Albanese says, well, we'll get to what they're doing with fuel, but I wonder if they've thought about all these other gases. And the fact of the matter is, well, they're going to have some problems getting it. Where else do we use it? Well, it's used pretty extensively in scientific research in universities. It could be used to freeze samples, keep things safe, keep them from spreading, maybe, like the Ebola disease, or any other pathogen that they happen to be working on. Now, our universities, our research centres, private and government driven, are all importing extremely dangerous things to find a cure for. We know that we have Ebola. We know that they've probably got the spicy cough tucked away there somewhere, and which version of it they've got and how energized it might be could be one of the more serious issues. But until we are able to open those vaults, God knows. But helium is used in microchip manufacture. It's used in cooling wafers and precision processors. It's used to leak test high purity environments. So something that, is essentially got to be a vacuum, well, they use helium to test. Now, I don't know that we've got much of that work going on here in Australia. We do a little bit of electronic supply, some advanced manufacturing, but for the most part, most of that particular area will affect Asia and China, who does not produce helium at all. They've got to get it, and one was assuming they were getting it from Qatar. They've got to get it from somewhere. Helium is also available through Russia. Don't know what quality it is. We were getting it from Russia at one stage, but it's not real flash, apparently. The industrial and the manufacturing sector use helium. Now, just think of the roll-on effects here. Now, we don't have a manufacturing sector anymore. We do have a kind of industrial sector, I guess. But what happens when you can't weld anymore because the gas you require to shield your MiG or your TIG or whatever it is unavailable? Because that's what's used. In a lot of cases, helium is used to shield the connections, and in fact, argon and other things are used to shield the flames in different forms of welding. When you can't get those gases, what happens to your welding? Comes to a grinding halt. So that means what little manufacturing we have left in this country, heavy manufacturing, and it doesn't even have to be heavy. This will work all the way down to, or all the way up to the highest forms of welding. You need gas to do it, and they're not going to do it. Helium is, as I say, inert. It's not flammable. It's very light and very easy to manipulate, very precise. And that's precisely why it's needed in silicone chip manufacture and all that kind of stuff. Not just there, rockets, Elon Musk and co at Not a Space Agency, they claim to be using it to fuel rockets, defense applications, probably by the millions. Helium is absolutely everywhere, not just your party balloon. I am a bit concerned about what happens when these exotic gases disappear. We don't have helium to keep Ebola with us anymore. I think that is probably about as concerning as life can get, because what happens with the pathogens? Do they just die inside the, as you would hope, just die inside the overheating fridges in the lockdown facilities that they are supposedly kept in? Or do we get some numpty who decides to take one of these things out of the lab because it will die and he's got some way at home of keeping the thing alive? Bearing in mind, it sounds a little sci-fi, but these people know how to build little cryogenic chambers. All they've got to do is keep a sample of this shit alive so that they can keep studying, keep getting their government funding. That's probably one of the more concerning things for me about what happens when the helium runs out. All of these biological samples and pathogens that we have locked away in universities, military and government research facilities, private research facilities, all of them are under control of people who are now going to be under a great deal of pressure to find a way to get to work, to get through their week with food, because the trucks won't be turning up as regularly as they have been at the supermarkets. And odds are when you turn up at the supermarket, it will be a bit like it was in East Germany in the mid-70s and early 80s, where you lined up for as long as it took. And if you got to the head of the queue and there was no bread left, then you didn't get any bread or milk or whatever else you were looking for. And they were all separate lines. That time is coming, but the government will have a solution for us, folks. Don't you worry about that. They will have a solution. We have 2 suppliers left, you say. 2/3 of the world's supply is still available. Algeria and, God bless them, the USA. Let's start with Algeria. Well, pardon me, Algeria is French-controlled, and Air Liquide is a French-based company that produces all of the helium that comes out of Algeria. Now, they're going to need permission from the French government to do a new export deal to Australia for large amounts of helium. How well do you think the French will receive this request from AUKUS ALBO? Do we think that, President Macron and his husband, wife, whatever it is, have forgiven Australia enough to allow helium exports to us? We did screw them with a submarine deal worth billions, and Air Liquide would have stood to make a lot, many, many, many hundreds of millions of dollars out of the supply of essential gases to weld these submarines together. So, all right, I'm not saying it's off the table completely, but Algeria and the French might be a hard ask. So that leaves us with President Trump. Okay. Well, we already know he's a little displeasured with AUKUS ALBO. ALBO has knocked him back publicly on a couple of occasions, now seems to be simpering towards him in certain ways to aid the war effort, so to speak. We are sending a ship. We're not sure what that ship will do when it gets there. We have sent some RAFIs and some aircraft. We're not exactly sure what we'll allow them to do. But if they're anything like the Australian sailors on board nuclear submarines, they'll be told to look the other way, park their jets, or cool their jets. Is that the term? And not get involved too closely. On the boat side of things, I don't know what they're going to do about that. Anyway, Donald Trump likes a deal. What kind of a deal can the Australian government, can AUKUS ALBO and Penny Wong come up with that will guarantee that enough helium reaches our shores so that Australians needing life-altering diagnoses and the services of an MRI machine will actually be able to get it? What guarantees will the Australian government be able to get from Donald Trump and the American government that our supply of helium will be enough to keep all our MRI machines in the country going? Now, I know there may not be a lot of MRIs in regional areas. They are in some. Can you imagine what will happen to those regional folks who need an MRI? And it will be the regional ones first to miss out, I'm sure, when those folks need to go to their nearest capital city. Now, in some states, that's not such a big ask, but in states like Queensland, South Australia, Northern Territory, Western Australia, it's a very big ask, particularly if you live in the north, and it's going to have a huge impact on families. Maybe not because of the travel, but because of the people that are going to die, because this is going to get very, very messy. I don't know. Albo seems to be able to make a lot of friends. What maybe he should do is invite Donald Trump to Sydney. He can get him and the president down to that mosque in Lakemba. They can have a halal sausage sizzle together and discuss how that Australia's future can be secured. And Albo can show just how immensely brave he is, given his recent actions. I'll show you that. I thought the noticer got it beautiful. Absolute total fear. Could not be a better picture. And 100% right. Albo spoke up real big. Oh, it was all good. It was all good. No, it wasn't. He couldn't run out of the mosque fast enough. So he walked at a very rapid pace. Yeah, he just couldn't run. That looked bad. The optics for running is not good, but he walked like he was an Olympic walker to get out of the joint, and his security were having a hard time keeping up with him. So anyway, it could all be a bit of a moot point, really, because even if we do manage to score enough helium so that we can keep our MRI machines up and running and keep our patients diagnosed correctly, you won't have enough fuel to get to the hospital to have the MRI done. All right. Let's assume for a minute that the MRI machines don't work anymore. That's going to be a pretty horrible thing to work, but let's assume that. Now, people are going to be misdiagnosed without the detailed imagery that the doctors are used to these days and have been trained to look at. People are going to get misdiagnosed. Things are going to get lost. Doctors can't spot tiny issues that, they ordinarily would be able to spot because the MRI technology is so good. What do you think the conversation's going to be like with a lawyer and maybe a life insurance company? Let's say, for instance, your mum and dad or your son or daughter or someone close to you has a very bad car accident. They've received severe head injuries, and they, after 2 or 3 weeks in hospital, pass away. An autopsy is done, and it's discovered that there were a number of fractures in the C6 to C8 range and the T10 to 12 range, meaning that you are going to be a quadriplegic or a paraplegic potentially going forward, but you were going to survive. What they did miss was a number of micro fractures going up your neck and into your skull or your kid's skull, and fragments of bone that were working their way into the brain, which eventually killed them in 3 or 4 days, especially when an untrained or new orderly comes onto the scene and rolls your loved one onto their side so they can change the sheets, and they stroke out because of it. Now, I'm not saying that's happened. I'm just saying things happen. Who is at fault? Who do we blame? Because right now I can tell you that the American company or the American industry of helium production has notified the world that due to force majeure, they will no longer be able to supply helium. So we've pissed off the French to a point where I don't think Macron's talking to us in a civil manner. And the Americans have just shut up shop and said, no, we're keeping what we're making for ourselves because they have a much larger population, a whole heap more MRI machines that need to be kept cool. And you can be guaranteed they won't be going to the French for them, for their supply of helium. Unlike Australia, who has plenty of helium reserves, we've got a shitload of helium reserves. They are in the Northern Territory, they are in Western Queensland, there's huge deposits in South Australia, and there's deposits in Western Australia. They're known deposits, but nobody's bothered to go and get them. So how long does it take? We know basically how long it takes to set up a refinery for fuel. How long is it going to take to set up something that gives us an independent supply of helium so that we don't have to watch our loved ones die by misdiagnosis? Not blaming the doctors, but somebody has to get blamed. Who do you blame? You blame the Iranian bloke who pushed the button that fired the missile that blew up the supply center in Qatar? Do you blame the hospital because they missed it? Do you file suit against the doctor because they should have seen the bone fragments somehow floating around the skull? All gets very messy. And then the insurance companies get involved. And so if you were expecting a payout, you need a defined cause of death, I mean. Now, what happens if the insurance company chooses to accept the first link in the chain, the force majeure offered by the production companies that say we can't supply it anymore? And the insurance company washes their hands of the whole thing. Oh, well, force majeure. The two strongest words in the insurance language. Well, nothing we can do about it. Bad luck. So sorry. No insurance payout, no coverage, no refund on the premiums that you've paid all your life. No, we'll just keep that money. Thank you. We found the loophole we need so that whatever your insurance payout would have been, $1, $15, $20, $30 million, whatever it would have been, it won't be. And so not only does your family miss out on the benefit of that inheritance or that insurance payout from what really killed you, not the incompetence of somebody who wasn't trained right and rolled you over a funny way and you stroked out. They're choosing the whole fact that you're in the hospital due to a force majeure of another thing that happened overseas, and it's all just a bit of bad luck. And you know what's sad about that? Most people would accept that. And I find that sad, really sad. The insurance companies have a lot to answer for. And very soon, health insurance might become quite a thing, because the fresh fruit and veg that you've come to know and love so well is about to come under attack. Now, I'm hearing some very worrying concerns about this coming out of far north Queensland. Farmers are very concerned. Bananas. Now, if you like your bananas, folks, go and get them now and get them for a decent price. I saw them today for, I think it was $5 a kilo for Cavendish bananas, and I didn't think that was too bad. And then I saw them for $1.99 at a little side fruit shop somewhere. And I thought, oh, that's pretty good. Bananas are going well. Well, that's because right now there is a reasonable supply. But that's going to change. As of today, far north Queensland trucking companies that normally move the bananas or anything else that's grown up there from far north Queensland down to, I guess, specifically the Brisbane markets, and then from there further south into Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, all parts in between. Funny thing about tropical fruits, you can only grow them in tropical areas. So, or grow them in mass at least. Probably got a hard time growing bananas in Victoria, I would have thought. Right now, the farmer who is growing those bananas in far north Queensland rings up the trucking company, says, righto, I've got a load to go to Brisbane. And the trucking company is saying to them, Okay, great. We're charging $400 a tonne plus a 38% fuel loading. $400 a tonne, and now they're throwing on a 38% fuel loading. And that doesn't guarantee that they're going to take your job. Now, you might agree to pay $400 a tonne. Those B doubles, I think, can carry 90 tonne, anywhere between 60 and 90 tonne. I know that's a big difference. But I don't know what 60 times 400 is, $2,400, $24,000, something like that. That's a lot of money. And then you've got to cough up on top a 38% fuel loading. Now, that'll be 38% on top of, I gather, whatever the current fuel price they charge you is. And you might think, my God, that's highway robbery. That's all of the things that they shouldn't be doing. But have a thought for these companies. They try very hard not to come back empty. And one of the big Far North Queensland trucking companies is a company called Blenners. Now, I know they try exceptionally hard to not go back to Far North Queensland empty. They will carry anything back, but they usually only bring fruit and veg down. Now, if they've got nothing to go back, it makes the trip twice as expensive. They're going back empty. The trip from Cairns, Townsville, or even further north than Cairns, up into the Far North Queensland tropical areas, up past Port Douglas, up to Mossman, where they grow a lot of bananas. You're looking at 2,500 kilometres and a truck full of fuel to get down here. Then that truck has to be able to get home. Will it? Well, it might be able to afford a tank of fuel with a 38% fuel loading, but the fuel has to be available for it to take on. Or, as I fear will happen, the fuel will be rationed and trucks will be able to get 100 litres or a couple of 100 litres per time. They won't be able to fill up. And that might be enough to, say, get them from Brisbane to Rockhampton. That will get them out of the city in the metro area. Becomes Rocky's problem then, and the problem for the drivers and the truck owners. The good thing about being stuck in Rocky is that you're closer to Mackay, where the fuel that is coming into the country actually comes into the country. So the odds are that you'll get replenished in Rockhampton first, but you might only be able to buy enough fuel to get you to Mackay, where you've got to stop again and fill up and eke your way back up the coast like that. And because there are some very new developments happening in the world that I'm sure this bunch of morons that is running this country, if they're not already aware of, certainly will be very soon. God knows if I know about it, you'd have to assume that these fools do. They're going to make traveling or being able to buy even the limited amount of fuel they're going to let you get very difficult. So what I can see is that our fresh fruit and vegetables, and right now bananas and avocados are going to be the main things affected, will get about as far as the Tropic of Capricorn, which is Rockhampton, Gladstone area. That's about as far as the trucking companies can afford to take the fruit and the veg. Then other trucking companies, one assumes, will have to lift the load from Rockhampton somehow and bring it to Brisbane. How they expect to make money out of it, God only knows. But you can rest assured that the price of bananas won't be $5 a kilo much anymore. In fact, I'd be thinking it'd be closer to $20 a kilo. And for things like your avocados, where you might get 3 for, what do you get? I'm not much of an avocado eater. 3 for $5. You'd be lucky to get 3 for $50 the way this is going. So stock up on your favorite fruit and veg. And I might suggest you go and get a little tinned fruit too. Because like I say, if you like your tropical fruits, the idea would be to live in a tropical area for the next little while, because that's the only way you're going to get them. It's going to be too expensive to ship them south by boat, plane, or train. We ship nothing by train anymore except for coal and wood chips and ore. I believe there is scope for that to change, but who knows? Now, I was talking to some people today about what it costs to run a B-double semi-trailer, and I was a bit surprised. They tell me that it becomes too expensive to run a B-double if fuel hits $1.70 a litre. Once it hits $1.70 a litre, they have to start charging loadings and things like this 38% fuel tariff. Now, that gets worse if you've got B triples or you're using quad trailer. And a lot of fuel carrying trucks are quad trailers that come out of particularly the Mackay port, where the fuel store is, and travel inland to the mines and all that kind of thing. They carry 200,000 litres, those quad trailers, and they do really big jobs. So the mines, one of them, but they also do a lot of the big farming properties out there too. Now, they cost a shitload more than $1.70 a kilometre. Well, that's not to run. That's just how to sort of break even. Now, the bureaucrats have made decisions over time that has kept the larger trucks off the main supply routes. They've done that because the larger trucks are larger. Some of the roads are not built to let a B-double turn, make a left or a right-hand turn, for instance. These are all good reasons. But a lot of B-doubles now have to drop a trailer on the edge of a city or a town and then just go in with whatever they've got on, unload that, come back out. And if they have to, drop that trailer, pick up the other one and take it into town and unload off it as well. What the trucking industry is trying to arrange now is for some relaxation of the laws regarding what trucks can travel on what roads, for instance. It is going to become more economical, for instance, if Queensland heavy vehicle operators can go to the farms and run B triples down the Bruce Highway as close as they can to get to Brisbane, understanding that you couldn't get a B triple through the road systems in Brisbane to get them to the market, but you could get them down here. That would allow a lot more product to come down in one fuel run, if you like, and for one fuel cost. Yes, there would be a slightly increased cost to the fuel because you're adding another trailer or whatever you're doing on board and the weight and all that. But we're getting more down. Same for stuff that's got to come up from down south, or for stuff that's being taken out of the Brisbane market and heading for the Melbourne, South Melbourne markets, or markets all over regional areas of this great nation. They get fed through there too. We need to be able to get a lot more stock on the road at a much more economical cost. That's the only way we're going to be able to bring down the end price to you and I, and making sure that one banana doesn't wind up costing us $20. Because I know it sounds stupid, but right now it is not beyond the realms of possibility. Now, Albanese has just come out in the last hour or two and said he's done a deal with his good mate from Singapore, Mr. Wong. The good mate, Prime Minister Wong from Singapore, apparently took Albanese's phone call where he spluttered and stuttered down the phone for a while and begged, I assume, to be put back on the roster to get some fuel. There were 6 ships due and heading to Australia with fuel that were turned around yesterday. 2 from Malaysia, 2 from Thailand, and 2 from Singapore. They were rerouted to different ports, or they were sent back to their home refinery port. The question I have is why? Well, it's pretty easy to understand. We haven't paid for that fuel yet. Somebody offered more money for it. And that's where 2 of those boats went. The other one went back home to Singapore. Well, the other 2 went home to Singapore full. Okay, maybe Singapore's got a fuel shortage when they're the biggest supplier in Asia. But, okay, or could they just be waiting for a better offer? Well, it may have had the right intention, and it certainly elicited an action from Albo Sleazy. Jumps on the phone, and next thing we know, a statement is issued, and the headline is, I should probably read this 100% correctly, so just give me a moment here while I try and bring it up. The headline for this is, Australia, Singapore to work together on fuel security after shipments cancelled. So what we have to remember here is that the shipments we're talking about being cancelled, two of them came from Singapore, the same place that Albo's saying, no, send us fuel. Now, the quote, and I particularly like this, the quote that Albanese gave is, we are committed to working together to strengthen energy supply chain resilience, including by deepening regional cooperation. We already train the Singaporean Air Force and Navy and Army. We do a lot of things with Singapore. We are very good friends and partners of Singapore on many, 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 many levels. But by deepening regional cooperation, how much deeper can we get in to cooperate regionally? That's just words. It's bullshit. Accelerating renewable energy transition. I'll read the sentence. We are committed to working together to strengthen energy supply chain resilience, including by deepening regional cooperation, accelerating renewable energy transition, pardon me, addressing unjustified import and export restrictions, and maintaining open trade flows. All right. Accelerating renewable energy transition. So Singapore is going to pay us to stop complaining about the lack of diesel and petrol we're getting and build more renewables. Why? How's that going to help our fuel situation? Accelerating renewable energy transition. The next bit, addressing unjustified import-export restrictions. Well, the unjustified bit was we had 6 ships coming to us yesterday, and 2 of those ships came from Singapore, and somebody in Singapore said, nah, turn them around, bugger the Aussies. So I hope the Prime Minister has some sort of say over that commercial decision by the refinery operator, because if they don't, the idea that we can maintain open trade flows is a pure bloody fantasy. Now, the quote goes on. In this context, we reaffirm our commitment to strengthening energy security. We have no energy security. Reaffirming the commitment to who? Who is that commitment being affirmed to? Is it Singapore? If so, then we reaffirm our commitment to strengthen energy security by buying more fuel from you. Presumably, because we're going to be at least 2 tankers a week shy from Malaysia and Singapore, Malaysia and Thailand. So we're going to buy another 4 more a week from you. That might be how I can see how we could reaffirm our commitment to energy security, to support the flow of essential goods, including petroleum oils, such as diesel and liquefied natural gas, between our 2 countries. So could this be a sign Singapore wants our liquid natural gas? We've got a lot of it. We want their petrol. They've got a lot of it. Maybe. It goes on. And to notify and consult each other on any disruptions with ramifications on the trade of energy. That last line, that's nice. And to consult each other, to notify and consult each other. That indicates that the turning around of those 6 ships yesterday was rather unexpected by the Australian government. They found out about it when the petrol companies that sent them made it public that they had recalled them. Once again, the Australian Labor Party caught with its pants down. Not an unusual situation for them. We would expect to see more children gathered around, but that's another story. So what do you think of Albo's fuel security solution? Do you think that's going to work for you? I'm sure it's going to be a very exciting time for us all. And as part of that fuel security, we're going to make sure that you only get as much of it as you, well, no, not you want, as much as we deem you require. Have absolutely no doubt they will use this as an opportunity to reintroduce digital ID, and particularly QR-coded digital ID. How long do you think it'll be before this bunch of low-life corporate monkeys engineer this digital ID QR code system back into your life? My bet is it's going to be a matter of weeks, not months, weeks. QR-coded petrol rationing linked to your digital device. All right? You'll only be able to get fuel once a day. You'll have to use this QR-coded digital device before you can get the fuel. And once you've got the fuel, you will be locked out from every other fuel station for 24 hours. You will not be able to go and get any more than whatever the allocated amount will be. Now, I can hear you say, that'll never happen, Carl. They wouldn't be brave enough after all that bullshit. Well, you'd think, but Sri Lanka have switched it on in the last week or so. QR-coded basic system for rationing fuel sales. You get a weekly quota for cars and motorbikes, 15 litres for cars and 5 litres for motorbikes. That's all you're going to be allowed a week in Sri Lanka. But do not despair. The move requires consumers to register and download a QR code specific to their vehicle for use at fuel stations. The weekly quota for cars and motorbikes is limited to 15 and 5 litres respectively, and it will be switched to a digital QR code-based system to ration fuel sales and move authorities described as a precautionary measure. Lockdown for 2 weeks. It'll end it. It'll all be over then. Lockdown for 2 weeks, you'll be fine. QR code, 2 weeks, you won't have to have it. It'll be fine. Any of this starting to sound familiar? I mean, it's hard to react and have any meaningful input when you're so far behind the 8 ball in what this country is able to produce itself. But my God, it has to change. It has to change immediately. And if it can't change immediately, I fear that the next few years are going to be very, very hard on all of us in a variety of ways. Even just tonight, discussing the helium shortage that we are going to have. That's going to impact you potentially in ways you don't know yet because you haven't fallen over. You haven't twisted, maybe broken an ankle or a bone that needs to be looked at. I know we have x-rays, but sometimes they're not clear and detailed enough. Plenty of things have been missed in x-rays, and my left wrist is one example of that. I don't think I've talked about it, but I've got an example of that. So yes, when you need detailed imagery, particularly of things like brains and lungs and hearts and, all that sort of stuff, then this is a fairly significant issue. People will die because they haven't been able to get MRI scans done. And while it will be the fault of the medical profession to a point, the medical profession used to have old people in it who would know a workaround for something like this, or what they used to do in the old days. If they thought something wasn't quite right, they'd maybe work towards it anyway. And I know some of that probably was done blind. They didn't have the access to the imagery that we do today, but the older folks still managed to treat things as best they could. People still survived. Today, those people that have graduated through the medical system over the last, well, I'd say 20 years, have been taught a whole new way of medicine. And that is, they've been brainwashed into how to doing it. They've been brainwashed into the petrochemical big pharma way of doing things. And they do not have the vaguest idea how to work without them. And that, my dear friends, I think is one of the scariest things that we are going to face in the near future. One of the happier things that we will face in the near future, if you're a One Nation supporter, and I know that there are a lot of you out there, and a lot of you who are waving the finger at various folks, including myself probably, to say that voting doesn't really work. Well, the South Australian election over the weekend clearly proves that the tsunami of support for One Nation that I've been referring to for weeks is a very, very, very real prospect. So let's get a bit of a quick update on where they're at the moment. There is now confirmation that One Nation has made the final two in a large number of seats throughout South Australia. Now, that alone is a major shift in the way voting patterns work in South Australia, a huge shift. It's the traditional ALP versus Liberal fight. That's gone, clearly broken down in multiple electorates. It's not just in one or two across the state, it's in multiple electorates. Now, the Electoral Commission had to abandon their usual election night preference counts because they couldn't reliably determine who the final two candidates in many seats would be. And if you were watching the Sky News coverage at all on Saturday night, you would have seen that they had their systems preloaded as a two-party preferred vote system, which excluded One Nation. And in so many cases during their broadcast, they couldn't use it, or they went to use it, and it showed a Liberal winning, and their numbers guy had just finished explaining how One Nation were in front. So, yeah, it was moving faster than the Electoral Commission could deal with it. And that means that the South Australian electoral result is, I'd have to say, probably about the most disruptive electoral result I recall ever. I mean, they have rocked South Australia, and huge changes. The battlegrounds, and there are many, are up. Hammond, the seat of Hammond. One Nation now looks like they're the favourites there. The Liberal and the Independent preferences are likely to flow into One Nation's side and push them over the line. This was an unexpected seat, and it looks like it's going to be a pickup. The jury, I don't know if I've said that right, One Nation candidate there is on track to win, likely to be their first confirmed lower house member. McKillop, which encompasses, think South Australia and sort of north, South Australia, think Mount Gambier in South Australia over to the Gulf and north. That's One Nation leading the Liberals by about 12% on the primary vote currently. Now, whether or not, and it was such a strong indication on Saturday night, kept going today through the voting. However, it'll all come down to how the primary, how the preferential votes go there, and where the Liberals and the Independent put their preferences. So they're predicting 50-50 chance of winning McKillop, which would be pretty good. Narungga is another one that's on the go. Now, they're leading in the primary vote at the moment, One Nation, but the Liberal Party is likely to benefit from some preferences that are still in play there. So that one's on a knife edge. It keeps going. Light. This is the seat of Light. One Nation has a 34% primary vote versus a 38% ALP vote. a very, very strong showing for One Nation there, but it is a Labor heartland. But my God, hasn't it shocked them? So whether or not they can get over the line will heavily depend on the preferences in that area. And I haven't been given the preference sway for that particular seat, but it's possible that they're going to cop the Liberal preferences that they have in many other seats, and that could put One Nation up and over the line there too. Finis, I think you say it, is another seat in independents leading there. One Nation were extremely competitive but got blocked by the preference flows coming through there. Cavill, another very fragmented seat. The outcome's going to depend on basically who gets eliminated in what order, and then how those preferences from the eliminated go. So it's going to be an interesting one too. So there's a lot of things still to keep an eye out for regarding One Nation's success in South Australia. But what I think we can confidently say is that there are now 3, I think, confirmed, and it looks like they could get as many as 4, possibly as many as 6 people into the South Australian Parliament. That would be a staggering and very surprising result for the major parties. I don't think it's surprising in any way for most clear-thinking people. We, the clear-thinking people of Australia, have simply had enough of mainstream uni-party politics. Bastards. So One Nation does seem to have done the hard part. They've won the vote. They've won the battle for the hearts. The seats are still being decided by the preferences, which is a whole heap of discipline that I would prefer to see erased, but that's a whole other story. And where the left sits after all of this will be pretty interesting too. Fingers crossed. I hope all things go well in South Australia for everybody involved. I know Vince is pretty excited for the area that he's in. It looks like that bloke's going to get up, which would be pretty good. Very quickly, medbeds today. There was a medbed meditation that happened this morning. I want to say it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. I woke up for it briefly, and then I meditated myself right off to sleep again. The medbed meditation was a global exercise I guess, meant to imbue the world with a solid desire and intent to have medbeds in our lives. Now, this has been promoted as part 1 of, I think it was 3 things we should be looking out for regarding medbeds. So today's meditation on medbeds, putting forward the best intent, I'm all for that. There are a number of people who watch this show that I pray for every day that we get a medbed and a solution to their medical issues. And that's because they have serious medical issues. So the sooner these medbeds can come, the better. And hopefully next time they have a mass meditation thing, I'll be able to stay awake a bit longer for it. I don't mean that out of disrespect. It's just that I'm not really used to it, and certainly not used to it at 3 o'clock in the morning, fun as and all as it is. And we've run an hour. So look, I will make just one comment I saw earlier in the comments. Brett Leonard, hello mate, good to have you back. Been a while. 3 weeks ago you said you were waiting for $80 silver and below, guaranteed. No one believed me it was coming. I think you're kind of wrong. I think there's a lot of people that believed you it was going to go there. However, you're discussing a paper price, and I wouldn't be concerned about if it drops to $80. Can you buy it for $80 or $81 or $82? I mean, what's the spot right now? I want to say it's about $92. Let me go to Ainsley and have a bit of a look. $93. There you go. So the spot's $93. Now, if I also roll down the page and see what I can buy, 1 ounce kangaroo, which is about the cheapest thing you can buy in 1 ounce size, is $113. Koalas are $115. There's stuff there that's $120. Ainsley bullion, by the way, still the cheapest coins you're going to find. If you look around, somebody told me today they've been looking. So if this is the dip, then I suggest you buy it. But it's still a significant difference between the $80 that you're hoping, or not hoping, but you're saying it will get down to. At the moment, we're sitting on 91.47 on the markets, it says here. So to drop an $11 or $12, let's say, that would be another significant hit to everybody. But you still can't buy silver. Back in the days on the way up, when it was at $80, you could have bought a coin for 82, 83, 85. If it was a real flash one, you might have paid $95 for it, only because you like really flash coins. Now, that difference between the paper price, the spot price, and the physical silver price is all the difference. So don't consider selling at the moment, folks. And if you've got a long face because you think the market's gone and tapped you the wrong way, there is a lot going on in the world, and many parts of the market are crumbling. In fact, I would go so far as to say that the world around us is crumbling in slow motion, and many of these things that we are experiencing and indeed are about to experience are designed to do nothing but wake up a global population. The big question is, how many of them will survive? And the happy answer to that question is there'll be a whole heap more people that do survive because of this, because the dickheads will not be able to get on the road.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!